Okay, so I'm going to be discussing Group 2, our discussion about public relations, international public relations. My name is Matt and I'm from Nagoya University. Okay, so how we framed our discussion of the various issues, we framed it as a series of questions, okay? In terms of international PR, we're going to just throw out some ideas. They're a little bit disorganized, but we hopefully will answer a few questions here. So we're going to ask, why is it important? Which I think is an important question. Who is the audience when you do international PR? How should we do it? Which is much more about strategy and tactics. How do you measure the impacts? So how do we know that public relations has any kind of effect? And what are the various challenges? Okay, so we framed our discussion in this way. Okay, so first of all, why is it important? I think most people in this room probably think it's important, okay, because we're all from the administrative side of the university. Essentially, the argument is you want to improve your university's reputation. There's some universities some people in the room representing universities that are widely known all around the world, but for I think most people, we're at universities that are less known around the world. Some of them are known very well domestically, but not known internationally. But we want our university's reputation to improve internationally, okay? Why? Well, we also want to attract better international students, international faculty. Students want to go and study at universities that are well known around the world. This helps their job prospects later. This helps them feel a kind of sense of pride in their own university. International faculty, there's so many universities in the world today that they will want to go and teach or do research at universities that they at least have heard about, right? I mean, many of us, again, are from smaller universities that maybe, the top researchers in a lot of countries have never heard of. So it's useful to get your university's name out there and your image out there so that people are familiar with you. And then, of course, to attract domestic and international funding and resources. Many governments, especially those of us from public universities, the governments evaluate the universities based on rankings, things like that. So it's very important to do well in international rankings, even though you might not agree with them, and they are certainly problematic. But still, you want your university to at least show up in a lot of the rankings. And governments will sometimes tie financial resources to how well you do in the rankings. Now, who is the audience? Well, traditionally, public relations, the audience is the traditional mass media, right? You want your university to make it into the newspapers, to make it on television broadcasts. You want a researcher at your university, their research to be picked up by the traditional media. But that's not your only audience these days. Due to, of course, the internet, people now actually can access your university website directly. They can access your press releases directly. So they don't only go through the mass media. So we also will mention non-traditional media. By this we mean, of course, bloggers, for example, social media such as Twitter and Facebook. Especially, there's a large number of blogs that are coming up about education in different countries. And whereas our target in the past might have been to be in the top newspapers in your country, if you're trying to attract students, you might want to make sure your university appears on blogs that students actually read. An example that I have from our university is there's a blog helping Southeast Asian students decide on scholarships. So a lot of students will go to this blog, and our university was mentioned on this blog, and all of a sudden we found lots of interest from students who had read this blog. Okay, so you can't only target traditional media anymore. Of course, we want to reach potential students, parents of potential students. They're the ones who are going to be selecting the university and paying for it. You want your university partners to have a good image of you as well, too. Especially now, universities are moving away from having just a large quantity of university exchange agreements. agreements now. It's more about quality and balance in terms of student mobility. So you don't want to just increase the number of partners without any kind of strategy. We already mentioned that governments and donors are, of course, an important audience with PR because that's where money comes from. The ranking agencies, we had a long discussion about, for QS ranking and Times Higher Education, especially Times Higher Education, 40% of in terms of their method for how they rank universities, it's about 40%, I think we agreed, is due to a survey. And the survey is a reputational survey. So they send the survey out to academics. So, most academics know universities due to joint research, publications, things like that. But there's also, if your university has a presence or an image, that this can also help it go up in rankings, especially Times Higher Education and QS. And then, of course, the wider society. Many of our universities, again, the private as well too, but especially the public universities, have a responsibility to society and transparency, accountability, being open in terms of what they are doing. Okay. Now, how should we do it? Well, as you can see here, it's a hodgepodge kind of ideas, but there are different ways to do it. Some universities have media relations offices. For many of the Asian universities, like our university, you have a traditional media relations PR office which operates in the native language of that country. Okay? And then what most universities will do that even have English material is just translate the native language into English and then just post that on their website. I know our university does that. But the problem with that is that the traditional PR offices usually are dealing with domestic audiences who have very different interests than an international audience. So you might, something might be really interesting for your domestic audience, something relevant research or something like that, but have no relevance whatsoever for an international audience. Okay? So many of these offices have media relations. Again, for the Asian universities especially, multilingual websites, multilingual PR material, English language materials. One university, I think, had 20 languages on their website, okay? Right? But you should at least have English if you're doing international PR, okay? But, of course, this increases the cost, right? Okay? It's not cheap to do a multilingual website to keep it updated. Data analysis, this is related not only to PR, but to marketing as well, too. PR and marketing, we can separate, and they're coming kind of closer together. But in terms of marketing, I've mentioned this in my presentation yesterday, but at Nagoya we do data analysis of where people access our website from, where they go on our web page, how long they spend on different parts of the web page, so that we can target specific audiences. And again, kind of the usual techniques of international PR, improving social media. Many universities are very top-down with their PR, but social media, especially with potential students, teenagers are pretty smart when it comes to social media. They know what's propaganda, right? And then they know what to trust. Well, okay, it's debatable these days. Don't want to make a grand statement like that, but okay. People often know what's propaganda, right? So if the university just keeps on your Twitter account or on your Facebook account, our university is great, we're doing cutting edge research, this is so amazing, credibility tends to be rather low. Okay, people just read that and they say, okay, well, so what? But if you can actually do blog posts or Facebook posts or Twitter tweets, then you get students to be young people to be engaged, the credibility increases. There's this whole idea of thought leaders, and there are some people that have more influencers, and there's some people who have more influence if they write something than if just the university does it. But again, I think a kind of generalization, but especially in Asian universities, certainly in Japanese universities, PR is very top-down, bureaucratic, formal, right? It's not very fun. But people share things that are fun, right? Those are the things that go viral. Inviting famous speakers is a traditional way to do PR. What we talked about was the people who are doing the PR, 10 minutes already, but okay, very quickly. The people who are doing PR should have their own, I can predict the future. The who are doing their own PR should be kind of independent, okay? So I'll go on a little bit. How to measure impact on international PR. The traditional way is to just count the number of newspaper stories that your university appears in. We do a little bit of content analysis. So content analysis means you not only count the number of stories that your university appears in, but you code it, like this is a negative story, this is a positive story. What are the issues that are being dealt with, right? So you can do this to analyze how your university is being reported in the media. There's different software that you can use for content analysis. We've also been doing web analytics. Again, I've already mentioned that, but essentially taking a look at who's accessing your web page. That helps you target potential students. That's more marketing than public relations, but again, they're kind of getting related these days. And as the quality of applicants gets better and better, hopefully part of the reason is due to public relations, but that's a very kind of noisy kind of data source to use as a measure. And then if your reputation starts to increase on the rankings, but who knows how they do rankings, right? Okay, now what are the challenges? Our colleague from the University of the Philippines has already mentioned the costs. University budgets in most countries are decreasing. So how can you argue that we need a PR office when you still have to pay professors' salaries, tuition is going up for your students, there's less scholarships? Is there an argument to be made for PR? I think there is, but again, it'll be up to the individual universities to decide on how important it is. We also did discuss how to draw attention from non-English speaking countries. Again, a generalization, but many of the universities in the room are non-English speaking universities, so it's much more challenging than for North American university to do effective PR. You really need a kind of team of specialists. You need people who can speak English, who understand external audiences, etc. You need cooperation. Again, I think this was mentioned in the previous presentation. PR is not only about the PR office, but when your faculty go abroad, or all of us here today are in some ways ambassadors for our universities, and talking to people is a form of PR as well too. An interesting one of our colleagues from Indonesia pointed out was crisis management. What happens when your university gets negative media coverage? Okay, right? How do you deal with that? In some ways, that's not really the job of the PR office, I think, which is more to shape the message. That's the university president and the committee at the top of the university. But the PR office does need a strategy. There's lots of stories of universities, academic cheating and falsification of data and falsification of results and crimes by students, things like that. How do you deal with those kind of issues? And then, of course, realize that there are different cultural and policy differences between countries. Okay, so thank you all very much.